Bruh. Hello everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Monday. Oh. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I'm a little bit rusty. I haven't streamed for like 2 weeks and now I'm incredibly rusty about it. Well, not 2 weeks, but almost more than 10 days. I didn't realize I didn't have my microphone turned all the way up, but the audio interface was down and it's a little bit of a mess. I'm sorry. I apologize for the scruffiness of the stream today. But at the very least, I'm actually using the entire thing, the entirety of Boatswain bleeding like freaking edge, and now I get to mute sources like the desktop or my microphone. Great work from Georges to interface with OBS properly, and now I can control a lot more. Great. Oh, hi Sophie, welcome. Yeah, honestly, Boatswain is now like super useful. It now covers everything I need for OBS. Now I just need to figure out a way to create a portal for it to talk to other applications. Since everything is sandboxed, then you really need something to traverse sandboxes between Boatswain and all the other applications in your system, so you can control them. That would be amazing. Like custom keyboard for your most used applications, so you don't have to use keyboard like combinations. I hope everyone had a nice weekend. I did. It was very restful. Yeah, after the stream on Friday where I presented like and went over the code base of Amberol, then I basically just took some time off the project. The funny part was that it took me 3 days to set up the project the way I wanted, and then it took me 4 days to essentially implement the project. That was funny. Oh, let me... It always takes a lot more to set up. To be fair, I'm kind of peculiar with how I set up my my projects these days. It's been a while since I just took whatever the initial state was and went with it. These days I'm adding all the licensing information, I'm adding the code of conduct, I'm adding the contribution guide, and that's even before I start writing the actual code. It's just a way to trick me into some form of executive like the executive dysfunction, it's pretty high, so I have to find any and all possible ways of tricking myself into starting a project without just giving up. So I've become pretty methodical about that stuff. Oh. I got a message saying that I broke a project that I don't even contribute to. Why does that happen to me all the time? But yeah, basically, if I don't do this, I get if I don't set up the project the way I want to, in a very specific methodical way, I never start. I just imagine what to do and then it breaks, and then just don't do it. It's not great. Sorry about that. Off the brakes and I get pinged. Yeah, it's amazing when you start doing stuff and you add warnings that what you're doing is broken, and then people basically blame the tool that is now telling stuff is broken. Cough, cough. Yeah, I also apologize. I still have a little bit of a cough left from my experience with COVID. So I'll expect sometimes I'll just mute myself. Yeah. Today I wanted to work a little bit more on Amberol and a little bit more on the implementation of the tool. The funny part about doing this stuff on stream is that you figure out, like, when you're doing stuff and you figure out, oh, I should do this, and then in the back of your head you start like thinking, is this going to be good for a stream, so it's going to be good content, or it's just something that I have to do off stream because it's going to be too complicated and I will spend most of the time just reading documentation or reading other code or just fumbling my way around with the language or the libraries or whatever, and you get into a weird space in your head where you're doing like content creation on top of actual creation. I long for the days when I could work on whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, without having to care about it. No, I'm kidding. I actually enjoy doing this stuff on stream. But yeah, it introduces streaming and content creation introduces a new level of weirdness on top of the actual creation process, which I did not expect at all when I started off doing this. I don't know, maybe it's just me though. Maybe it's just my constant lack of motivation of doing things, and then I suddenly find new motivations and new stuff. It's a weird headspace to find yourself in. I'm entirely unused to it, so I mean, I apologize if I just start messing about with stuff, or if I happen to do stuff on off stream that would be interesting on stream. Hi, Danielle. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, streaming is kind of a weird thing. I'm used to people streaming games, and I'm used to people like either just chatting or doing something like collaborating or doing a game, and it's an interesting experience. But I've seen people doing other things, like creating stuff on stream, like drawing or playing music or doing stuff like that, and it's kind of an interesting thing. But it's usually just, I'm doing this now and I'm also streaming it. But software development on stream is, I don't know, it's kind of weird. Probably because the way I do software development is mostly just going over existing code bases, or going over documentation, or writing down stuff on my notebook and then figuring out what to write. The actual process of writing the code is a minimal part of my day, and I don't know, I find it's not very interesting to stream at that point. That's why I usually, when I'm doing stuff like writing documentation is another thing. Writing documentation can happen on stream, and then I just write some code to verify the documentation is correct, and so on and so forth. So that is slightly different, probably because it is not something that I do often. I always joke that anybody that would be paired programming with me would die of boredom because I'm rarely programming. I would be the worst person to be paired with. I like program for half an hour straight and then spend the next 2 hours going around looking at the implementation elsewhere, or the documentation, or how the API calls are actually meant to be implemented inside the library I'm using, if I have that kind of access. And then I'll program another time. It's fine. I honestly don't understand the people that like the people that write code for hours and hours, and they produce an incredible amount of code that is then dumped in front of somebody else for review or anything else. And don't have that kind of temperament. At least I don't have anymore. I used to have it when I was like 20. I could do that. I could sit down in front of my computer and stay there for like 10 hours and write a ton of code. Most of the code would be chucked away without like any second thought. I do prefer the short session that produces code that is actually usable. It's usually not the best code. Yeah, no, it's not the best code. I've done that. I've written code like that. It should never see the light of any version control. That's why I am an obsessive compulsive rebaser. I never let the public see what happened, the train wreck that happened while the code was being written. Of course. I also saw that I gained a few followers, so if you're new here, then welcome. Welcome to my Monday stream where I just write code for the GNOME platform, or I write documentation for the GNOME platform. Yeah, if you're new here and if you're watching me, then feel free to drop by a comment in the chat. I am happy to answer questions about GNOME, GTK, and the community, or the platform, or the documentation. I'm happy. There is usually so much misinformation about the GNOME community that it's helpful to fix some of the wrong perceptions and the memes that follow GNOME. But yeah, in the meantime, let's go to my desktop. Oh, the transition from using OBS on my second screen that is sitting on my left hand to switch between scenes, and now instead pressing a button on the device in front of me is amazing. I strongly recommend it to anybody who's streaming. If you can, get a Stream Deck and then run Boatswain on it on your machine, and you will be able to do a lot more stuff and do it a lot quicker and a lot simpler. Okay, so let me figure out a way to set up my mic so I can actually reach my keyboard without hitting it. Hopefully it's still okay. I'm not peaking too much on my mic, and I'm also not too quiet. But yeah, touch typing, not something I'm able to do anymore. And also, my mic is right in front of my laptop. In front of my keyboard. So where were we on Friday? Friday, I just went over the initial implementation of Amberol. which is my music player for GNOME that has no delusions of grandeur. It only plays local files. It doesn't manage your music collection. It doesn't manage your music tags. It doesn't It doesn't manage playlists or anything. It's a music player. You have a music collection? Good for you. You can use it to load a directory or a single track, and you're going to be fine. Let's run it. Just to show what it is. Oh, hi, Georges. Ah, that sucks. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to fix this. It's loading the SVG at the basic size, but yeah. So I did a couple of changes here and there. The first one that is probably noticeable is that I added a little bit of a drop shadow behind the cover art. Mostly because I wanted to, but also because that's how the so Amberol has two main inspirations. The first one is Muin, which is the best music player for GNOME that has ever been written. The other inspiration for Amberol is the music player that I have on my phone, which is the stock iOS music player. And one of the things that it has is the little bit of a like drop shadow behind the cover art. On an otherwise flat surface is kind of a nice touch, I think. Of course, I'm pretty sure that the GNOME designers will start shouting at me because drop shadows, no, bad Emanuele, never use drop shadows. The advantage of this being not a GNOME core application and being developed by me, then I'll always allow it. How did I add a drop shadow? Custom CSS? Yes, it's custom CSS. I have a little bit of a style here that does a couple of like basic styling bits, like the buttons. The play button is large button and has a minimum size of 48 pixels. The song title, when I let me edit folder. The main title is like scaled 3 times and has a slightly thinner font weight. The timing is using numeric font features, and this one is the album art as a size in setting CSS and as a box shadow here. And I also have the overflow hidden bit there. Yeah, okay, so I know what you mean. I understand what you mean. The shadow, the box shadow that the card class uses is not what I want. It's not the shadow I want. Yeah, so if I do something like this here, the fuck. So if I do this and then I go in the window and the cover art here, and I add the... So this is how you do normally to add a style class to something. Let me close it and then me play it. You can see that the box shadow here is all around the picture here, the cover here. Cough, cough. This is not really what I want. I want an actual more visible drop shadow on the bottom of the icon here. I know about the card. I know about the card style, and I went over it, and I went over to the libadwaita API reference, and I looked at it, and yeah, no, I'm sure the design team would ask me for this and would tell me to do this. I don't particularly like it. Oh yeah, Julius, I use Boson to mute OBS. Cough, cough. I did. I'm using the very bleeding edge stuff, so absolutely. Let me check here. Yeah, as you can see, I prefer a little bit more of a shadow here and no shadow on the top and stuff like that. It's just a box shadow that is shifted down a little bit. The icon drop shadow, that one I didn't know. That one I haven't tested it. It could be an interesting thing to test. Yeah, why not? Let's try it. Let's try the icon drop shadow and see what happens there. I mean, I'm all for not having custom CSS locally. I don't see anything here. Let me see if I can get the documentation for it. Okay. App icons here, probably. Yeah, icon drop shadow. It probably only applies to GTK image. It doesn't apply to GTK picture. Let me see if I can get the definition of what libadwaita uses. It's probably just for GTK image, but I'm using GTK picture instead. Okay, widgets. Probably it's not here. I need to find it inside the maybe dialogues. Okay, so I need to open libadwaita. Yeah, it's in the common. Why is it in the common and doesn't work? So weird. Okay. Yeah, I don't see anything here. Okay. Style sheet. Come on. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, so icon drop shadow is applied to the actual icon. So it's not applied to the yeah, it's applied to the actual contents of the icon. I'm not loading an icon. I'm loading an actual like asset. So I'm actually getting a byte buffer and shoving it into a GTK texture. So icon drop shadow won't work. I could, yeah, no, I cannot even copy this. The syntax is different. So yeah, I'll have to tweak it so it's not aggressively too dark or anything. Like this one uses 0.3 at the bottom. And has a, yeah, this summation of shadows uses 1 pixel and 12 pixels. Something like this, probably. Yeah, probably a little bit of it like this. This is a bug in GTK and or matter on X11. The sizing is all like messed up. It adds more size. So if you're using X11 and your application is saving and restoring its geometry, the end result is that every time you reload it, it will be bigger and bigger and bigger. It's an annoying bug in GTK and or in Matter. Yeah, it's a little bit more subtle now. Probably a little too much. So maybe 0.3 is too much. 0.6 is probably going to be a little bit better. But yeah, so this is the reason why I should never do anything related to styling, because then I will start like obsessing over this kind of stuff, and yeah, it's not great. So another thing that I changed, what did I change? Oh, I added another feature from Viewing since Friday. I added the computation of the length of the playlist, given the current position inside the playlist. Let me mute my desktop because I don't want this stream to be DMCA to death. So if I run here, then you see this, and then I jump, and now the remaining minutes are different, and here again, and here again, and so on and so forth. Hi, Scaro. I'm wondering whether a GSK backend for WebKitGTK is technically conceivable. What do you mean a GSK backend for WebKitGTK? I'm not entirely sure what you mean. You mean using GSK in WebKitGTK? Or you mean using GSK to draw on top of WebKitGTK, because that would be kind of weird. And also it would be Broadway, essentially. Oh, you mean... what? You mean like WebKitGTK drawing using GSK? No, that would be completely no. No. WebKit already has its own scene graph and already has its own drawing stuff, and it draws with using Cairo surfaces. Maybe, I mean, I don't think it draws using Cairo surfaces at all. I think, as far as I remember, it WebKitGTK just sends command to something, and it uses like Cairo as the final surface. You cannot replace that with GSK. You could replace it with a GL texture and then take the GL texture and shove it inside a GDK texture and then upload that directly. At that point, you're not using really GSK. You're using just whatever, just a GDK surface to draw stuff. Yeah, that would be possible. So ideally, what you have is WebKit like drawing stuff on some form of pixel buffer and doing the compositing by itself and doing everything there. And then you take that particular like pixel buffer and then you decide where to display it inside the window that you're drawing into. So instead of using a Cairo image surface or a Cairo whatever surface, you draw it on top of a pixel buffer that is then placed into a GDK texture, which is so GDK texture is just a pixel buffer that GTK knows to shove on the GPU as fast as possible, and then draw it inside the command pipeline. And yeah, I think that would be, I think, the goal for WebKitGTK when integrated with GTK4. It should not use an intermediate Cairo surface. But other than that, I don't think you can do anything more than that with WebKitGTK and GTK4. WebKit has its own rendering API, its own rendering pipeline. It runs on its own stuff. It just needs a way to composite. It just needs a place to composite everything into. I think web browsers usually will get like a GL texture at the end of the day, which also you can do with GTK. Assuming you have it, like you can also do like zero copy. If you're using EGL and EGL images, you can do zero copy like transfer between processes or whatever else. That's how we do things like screen remoting in GNOME shell and other things like that. So that is entirely possible. And I assume that WebKitGTK for GTK4 already does it. Honestly, I haven't checked. I honestly haven't checked if the GTK4 port of WebKitGTK is already drawing on like pixel buffer without going through an intermediate Cairo surface. Yeah, no problem. So what else I changed from Friday? Friday I also changed yeah, the appearance on the playlist, like on the queue here. So it's a little bit more easy to distinguish the title and the artist. And I also did the immediate switch when enabling stuff, when activating a row in the playlist. I have to constantly just mute myself, mute the desktop. It's so... Otherwise, yeah, otherwise this stream is going to be DMCA instantaneously by the algorithm. I mean, I could mute myself as well, so if I didn't talk over it, then Google will be able to, Google or Twitch will be able to just mute the section with the song. But since I tend to talk over stuff, that would be very hard to do. Yeah, I already do it like super easily with Bosun, and I'm happy it works this well, honestly. So. Yeah, what else I've done? I mean, it's gonna be a little bit more easy to go through the log. Oh, the big change. Yeah, it went unnoticed, but so that was a big change. The cover art is now loaded instantaneously, because I used a new dependency. Instead of using taglib, I use Lofty, which is a crate for loading audiophile metadata that is written in Rust. So this is how I know the Rust ecosystem has changed dramatically since 2015, when I wrote taglib, the taglib Rust bindings. When I wrote those bindings, there were no other libraries or crates available to parse random music files. I think I remember you could have something that parsed only MP3 files and only specific versions of the IDV3 tag, but nothing else. Since 2015, now we have like a smorgasbord of crates that deal with this stuff. Some of them are pretty lame, but I found Lofty, which is actually really good. And I'm super happy with it because it loads stuff super quickly and it's easy to use. It's basically it's not a drop-in replacement for taglib, but pretty close. So I'm super happy about it. Let me see. So now whenever I load the song from disk, I just read the file and then extract the tag and extract the picture, and that's it, honestly. So I'm super happy about it, and it made the code actually pretty simple to handle. I modified it a little bit so that I could I did proper error checking if I couldn't read the tag, or if I couldn't read the like the contents of the tag and stuff like that. So now it doesn't barf up. I had my music collection is so, like, in some places is fairly old, so some some tracks are using non-UTF-8 payloads. So I'll have to actually figure out a way to convert that. But basically, yeah, Lofty was throwing a fit when loading those files. Which is actually good, because now I can find those files and fix them. If a random stranger asked for that, I wouldn't create as much. That is probably true. I mean, I'm also the same way. I'm also very much interested in making stuff work for me and for the people like around me, not for any random stranger. But yeah, to be honest, this feature is basically all I've ever asked for. And it's I mostly noticed because I follow a bunch of Twitch streamers and they all do this kind of stuff. So I'm pretty sure that the Windows application does this. So I'm happy. I'm thankful for your work on this application. It's already like miles above any other application I've seen for managing the Stream Deck. Sorry about that. I wasn't fast enough. The Windows application does a lot. Yes, it does a lot. It also is deeply integrated with a bunch of applications. It has profiles for like looking at Adobe Premiere or what else? Photoshop or other stuff. It's I think that is the main selling point of the Windows application. They have 40 plus developers working on it? Jesus. What? No. No way. 40 plus? I mean, they have 40 plus developers, like in general, in total, like on the device and on the application. I hope so. That would be like hilariously bad. Like just on the application would be like terrible. Just how bad is Windows development these days? Yeah, I'm not entirely surprised, but wow. Right, the app developer docs and SDK. Okay, yeah. I guess if you also add the various bits like behind it, then yeah, that's fine. That's understandable. I mean, I'm always shocked the fact that we have our volunteer developers are also the people writing the documentation, which it does just not happen in the proprietary/commercial world. Like, no, it does not happen. The people that write the documentation, even for developers, are not the people that are writing the code. You hire somebody to do this job. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that they have a custom OBS, but there is a custom OBS plugin. Yeah, not surprised at all. I mean, I've also seen what the other Elgato like app devices do and what other like stuff they have, like capture cards and everything else. And yeah, it seems it's a little bit like stretched thin as an operation. I'm sure there are more people working on the lower layers of their stack than there are people working on the upper bits, to be honest. Yeah. App launching portal. Yeah, I'll gladly help with the app launching portal, and then no, the window management actions for. I'll leave you, the shell developer, to deal with those. But the app launching portal is I'll be happy to help. What else I've done? Yeah. So, what else I've done this weekend, just as a laugh? Oh, this one is kind of fun. So, in order to add a folder, when we do this and we do add folder, and then we point it at a folder here and we add it, we use G file enumerator, the G file enumerator API. Where is it? The window. What happened here? Here. So we use a file enumerator here. Where is it? Here. A file enumerator is not going to iterate over, so it's going to iterate over the children of the current location. Directory will iterate over the files in a location. So that is fine. The order in which the iteration happens is entirely undefined. It's whatever the file system gives you, which means who knows? Which is, I mean, it's fine if you have a folder with a bunch of music files that are completely unrelated one to each other, like my small music directory that I use for testing. But if I open an actual like folder in my actual music collection, everything is ordered usually by album name, track number, and then track name. So I really want that order to be preserved. So in order to do that, instead of adding the song directly to the queue, I add it to a simple vector here, and then I sort the vector. And then I iterate over the vector and I queue the song. That is super simple. Hi Gammus. Is this play something I import my collection onto, or like VLC where I create playlist on the fly? Neither of those two. You don't add a collection to it at all, and you also don't create playlists. You open a file, you add a file or add a directory, and when you reload it, when you restart it, everything is gone. So close it, open again, and you have to add a folder again here, and everything gets loaded inside one, and you cannot save this. So it's kind of VLC, but VLC also has the ability to save the playlist, whereas Amberol doesn't let you do that, because it's all So the reason why it doesn't do that is because it's all sandboxed. So these files are accessed through the portal, which means their location is not the file system location. You get a path under the run directory, which is fine, but the end result is that you have no idea where these files are the next time you launch the application. So you cannot really save a playlist. Cough, cough. So the end result is that I have to figure out a way to store this stuff, like to store the original location, then ask the system to reopen it. I'm not entirely sure you can. The open location portal doesn't store the last location, all the location for an application, for obvious security reasons. So it would need some other kind of portal that says, mark this directory as a location for music, and then every time another application, like the same application starts and asks for all the location that are music locations, then give access to all the files underneath. But yeah, it creates a it's not really, it's for the entire duration of the application. Yes, it creates a file descriptor, a path inside the sandbox that lets you do that, and basically just proxies the file descriptor from outside the sandbox into the sandbox. It's like the document portal, basically. It's exactly that. This application also has access to the music XDG directory, user directory. So it will also deal with that, but I don't know if it remembers everything. I mean, it would be kind of weird if it did, because then every application would have access to the same file, which might not be what you want. And yeah, as I said, saving to playlist and like open the playlist, as long as it's done inside the sandbox, doesn't work. So I'm not entirely interested in that. I'm also not entirely interested in playlists, to be honest with you. It's not something that I care that much about. I usually, when I play music locally for myself, I decide like a bunch of songs that I want to listen to, and then I put them up, and then I don't care about it. It's not the same playlist at all every time. So yeah, like on my phone I have a playlist of specific music. I listen to it every once in a while. I don't really do that. It's much more often that I point it to my entire collection and then I say shuffle through all my music. But my phone is also a smaller collection, the music collection, than my actual music collection. My actual music collection is a little bit bigger than that, and shuffling through it is, yeah, it's never going to work out. But yeah, I mean, the point of this application is to be very specific and not have like features. It's a music player, doesn't do much. It does only that, and it's very opinionated about that. If you want playlists, if you want music management, if you want like proper music collection based application that plays music for you, there are plenty of music players. Even just inside GNOME, there are plenty of those. There's Rhythmbox, there's Lollipop, there's GNOME Music. If you go back, there is even Banshee. So if you want to, there are plenty of music collection, like music collection applications. This is kind of my replacement for, I want to listen to a couple of tracks or a bunch of tracks. I don't want to launch totem to listen to like audio. That's it. Oh yeah, I miss Banshee a lot as well. I used to be, so I used to use Rhythmbox, then I found out Mewing, and I used Mewing until it was maintained, so until 2008, 2009, and even 2010. Then when we switched to GNOME 3, I still used Banshee for a while. Mewing got archived in 2009, I think. So I switched to Banshee for a while, and then Banshee broke completely because it's still using gconf and it's still using GNOME VFS, and none of them work on modern GNOME. So I decided I'm gonna try GNOME Music. Or I'm gonna try GNOME Music, and GNOME Music failed instantaneously when confronted with my music collection, because it's not in my music XDG user directory. It sits on my NAS, or on my laptop it sits on a SD card that I use when traveling. So GNOME Music out. I started using Rhythmbox for a while, and it fell apart after a while. It's just it's become kind of brittle. It's not heavily maintained anymore as well. I tried Lollipop. Lollipop is good, but it's a music management application. It's more interested in managing your collection of music. I'm not interested in that at all. My music collection is already managed. And yeah, no, I decided to start writing my own music player. I couldn't find the Flatpak image for Amberol. It's not on Flatpak yet. It's not on Flathub, definitely, and it's not packaged yet. Because, well, there are two problems. I'm blocking on those. The first one is it doesn't have an application icon yet. So, yeah, there's no application icon, and I cannot release an application with an application icon. Somebody is working on it, and I'm at some point it will happen, but yeah. And the other thing that's missing is that the Flatpak, the AppStream manifest sucks. The main problem is that it needs screenshots, and I tried adding screenshots, and it wants specific screenshots with no space around them and everything, which requires a GNOME shell extension to perform. I'm not gonna say unkind words about the AppStream specification, and I'm not going to say unkind words to the AppStream validation tool that is currently used by Flatpak or whatever else. But I'm just going to say this. They are not good. I have no idea how people cope with them. I have no idea how people cope with this entire process. Honestly, I have no idea. It's completely opaque. The validation messages are useless to the point of being aggravating. And there is no documentation whatsoever about what kind of requirements there are for this stuff. So No, I haven't pushed it on Flathub yet because of these two reasons. It will happen. It will happen. I'll figure something out. But yeah, I'll push it on Flathub as soon as I have an application icon. Yeah, I have a validation tool. I have a validation as part of the CI pipeline and test suite for where is it here? So I use AppStream util with validation for the AppStream data file. So I could easily remove this. I could easily remove the validation step. There are two problems there. The first one is Flathub uses its own validation, its own rules for validating stuff that are not the same as the AppStream validation that you install in your system. I have no idea why it happens, whatever. And yeah, it's so aggravating. Yeah, Sophie, I know that there's some work happening on this. There has been work happening on this for a while now. The real work that should happen is this. First of all, the validation tool should explain what's happening, why the validation is broken, how to fix it, and whatever else. The validation tool does not do that. It will just tell you, oh, the screenshot has some padding around the image, so it's not gonna pass. Okay, that's one. The other one is that the specification is not up to par. The documentation of the specification is not up to par. It doesn't tell you what are the requirements to make the validation step pass. The validation tool is operating on rules that are not public. That is an instantaneous fail in my book of the entire effort of publishing a specification and documenting it. It means you're playing with all your card covered, and it's not how this stuff works. You have to tell people how to make stuff work, and if the rules are undefined, then you're just insulting me and considering my time less worthy than yours. Again, I'm not gonna say unkind things. This is just the reality of it. If I wanted to say unkind things, I would probably just spend half an hour ranting on this shit because it's infuriating to me. And if it's infuriating to me that I maintain like 2 applications, I guess it has to be extra infuriating for people that are either maintaining a lot of applications or that they just started writing applications for this platform. I can only imagine. So, yeah. Of course, I cannot write a new AppStream specification because XKCD. Yeah, no, I'm not going to unleash the fury. Sorry, Georges. Again, I'm trying to not be unkind to the people that make this stuff and made it in the past. I understand that there are limits to what people can do, and the context is usually I have to do stuff and I don't have time, or I don't have the experience, or this is the first specification. I mean, my first specification was shit. People are still using this to this day, but it's pretty shit. Still, it's, yeah. Yeah, I would love to help out for this if I had time. I don't have time, unfortunately, so I have to wait until people just realize how crappy this situation is. No. Yeah, I mean, AppStream glib has its own rules, but the validation stuff is also happening here locally using the AppStream stuff and not the AppStream glib. But the specification by itself is pointless. I mean, if you go on the specification page, it will tell you, like, for instance, a screenshot. It will tell you, oh, there are screenshots there. What are the it's not even what are the rules for screenshots. It's just what is a screenshot, and the caption, what is the intent behind the caption, and there's nothing there. There's literally nothing. It's useless. It's completely useless. If the specification like described a bunch of things, a bunch of default stuff, a bunch of the intent behind the tags and stuff like that, the default values, the allowed range of values, it would be useful, because then you can say, okay, it's AppStream like glib that is terrible. And it is terrible. AppStream glib is absolutely terrible. It uses a bunch of rules that are entirely unexistent and entirely undocumented. It's fine. It's fine. But the specification doesn't tell you anything like that. Do you have a good example I can follow? Go on the W3C website and look at how a proper specification for formats exists to this day. That is a good way to describe a textual format made of XML tags. But yeah, rant on the AppStream and app data stuff, like, is done. The real blocker of the fact that this application is not on Flathub yet is because I don't have an application icon. That's it. Okay. So what else? What else I've done? Nothing much. Oh yeah, if I I've screwed over this, but yeah, if I press the previous track button, the default behavior is not to go to the previous track, but to restart the current track, and then if you press it again, it will go back. If you press again within a seek range, then it will go back to the previous track. This is a behavior of like a lot of music players on phones and stuff like that. Cough, cough. Yeah, it's useful for that. So that is another change that I made this weekend. Of course, I screwed up. So oh yeah, here. Let me go and fix it. There. Okay, so current song. Here and here. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I should also change this if it's playing or not, but yeah. Like do I want to? No, that's fine. There you go. So if I add folder, yeah, and I start playing, it will reset. I should probably tweak it a little bit, but so if I do this, yeah, I have to click it twice. Yeah, if I press it twice, it goes back one track. If I press it once while it's playing, then I need to. So one of the things I'm doing is the way this whole thing is implemented, all like UI control is are implemented is through actions, as I explained on Friday. Instead of using clicked callbacks for each button, I just change the state of the action here according to a bunch of stuff there, according to a bunch of rules. The rules are not well defined. I need to spend a little bit of time like figuring out the state machine. As usual, anything, any program, any GUI program is just basically a massive state machine. So figure out, okay, the initial state is everything is disabled. Everything is like, yeah, all the actions are disabled because I don't have anything to play. I add a song. What happens next? What kind of actions can I enable? Usually just play or what else? Yeah, play. If I add more than one song, I enable the seek, not the seek, the skip forward, and so on and so forth. And then there are a bunch of other like states, like if I'm currently playing, what happens? If I'm not playing, then whatever, what else is going to happen, depending on other like conditions and stuff. So it's useful to have all this logic inside very specific like conditions, especially if you're using notification about state changes. There's a little bit of repetition here already, which I need to cut down. Like this here is this property gets notified whenever the number of songs that are currently queued has changed. So I added, or in the future I removed some song. So I just set a bunch of action state, whether or not the actions are enabled, depending on the current state of things. But I also have to do it whenever the current song changes. So if I advance, if I change song and I have a new song currently playing. And then there are also like notifications that will happen, the state that will change if I'm playing or not playing. And so on and so forth. So it's not just a state machine, but states can re-enter at some point in different like places. So I might need to figure out an actual. It's not a state machine like type, but consolidate everything inside specific functions. Like every time this state is achieved, do this. Every time this state is achieved, do this. So I don't have a lot of duplication of code. Not that duplication is bad, actually, but yeah, duplication is not bad. That is the fact that duplication is bad is a myth. But you don't want to prematurely deduplicate code. Cough, cough. But yeah. So, what I wanted to do today, it's probably something a little bit simple to deal with, but it's something that I wanted to add for like at the very beginning of the application, because it's something that is kind of useful, which is being able to drag a music file on the application and have the Amberol like queued up immediately. So basically turn the entire window inside a drop target, sorry. So in order to do that, we are going to have to create a drop target. And we are going to do that inside our setup. Let me see. Yeah. In action, might say stop queue. Okay. Object. Setup. Drop target. And we add a function, a method here. And this function will be called whenever we instantiate the window. We don't want to mutate the window, and we have to keep track of the drop target object itself. So the way we do it is we add a drop target in our window UI as a child. Let's put it at the very top. Right, so this is the window handle. Okay, so it's going to be not a property here, property content. So here. So a drop target, let me find, yeah, here. Let's go here. So drop target is a class that GTK4 provides to handle the drop part of the drag and drop of operation. It's an event controller, so you add it to a widget, and that's it, basically. Okay, so it has a bunch of properties, which are the formats here. Oh no, we cannot do that. We cannot add it to the UI definition file, because the UI definition file, yeah. So drop target has two yeah, as two constructor only properties. Is that yeah, it has a bunch of stuff there that has to be set. So we'll have to figure it out. Let me see if I can get, okay, drop target in Rust. That type error isn't great. Yeah, type invalid. Okay. Or we can use a builder. Yeah, we'll have to construct it in code, sadly. So we will not be able to do this. So we'll have to do it manually. So let drop target. Okay, drop target builder has actions. We want to have copy. So it's going to be GTK action copy. Then we want the formats. For type. So we are only interested in files. So GIO file. Okay, right. Yeah, that should work. Otherwise, we are. We also want the. Adding MIME type. Adding GIO files should also add the file no, we are not interested in MIME type. We are not interested in MIME type because we are not going to ask for the actual song data. We are asking for a file. So we are only interested in people dragging a file on top of the window. Drop target. So we're not interested in anything else there. Connect drop. Cough, cough. So we have a drop target value and the coordinates of the target, and we return something. We are going to have to clone. We're not interested in the drop target, but we're interested in the value and X and Y. This is the so in theory we could also do this. So we don't have to care about that. Oh, hi, Chip Will. Busy with your move in the camera station. So congrats for your move. Hopefully it went well. And I've always been a Rust station. This is my third Rust project, actually. The first one being the taglib Rust bindings. The second one, the implementation of the XDG shared MIME database, pure Rust parser, and media player written Rust. George's oddly satisfying. Yes, yes. It's entirely for you. This the dopamine rush is entirely for you at this point. Okay, so yeah, this is the clone macro from glib. Chris did a fantastic wrote a fantastic blog post explaining what the clone macro does. Let me see if I can find it, folks. Yeah, here. It's a very, very interesting blog post about lifetime handling, the closures, and the clone macro provided by the Rust bindings. It's very useful. It's also very useful to understand how Rust closures work in general, but it's also very specific to GObject and the GObject bindings. So yeah, in this case we are using a fallback. Yeah, here. Oh, actually the syntax is different. It's this. And this. Right. All it does is please pass self, which is the window object that we have, renaming it as win because self is a reserved keyword, but make it a weak reference because we know that the window object is going to survive after the callback has been invoked. So you don't need a strong reference there. The callback should have a return value of false, so you don't have to handle all the specific cases where that happens. And this is the actual closure that you're passing. So this is I'm not going to say it's visual noise because it's actually like syntax. It's kind of important, but it's yeah, you have to understand how this stuff works a little bit in order to understand how to deal with it in Rust. Okay, so this is basically just a drop target. We are just going to like emit a debugging message. We'll handle that ourselves later on. So let's see if it builds. Oh yeah, of course. And then we have to do when and here you'll notice that I am terrible at Rust. Yep. Drag action. Why can't it find drag action? Oh, it's in GDK. Sorry, not GTK. And this is not win, this is self. Yep. Okay. No. So this is missing an include. Okay. Yeah, it's not formats there. It's not going to be formats. It's going to be different there. It's the new type. So okay. And I need to create this new for type. Okay, so it's going to be format GDK content format or type. We also call it name. Content formats. Okay, what is happening here? Okay. it shouldn't be borrowing it. And yeah, I need to return something. Okay, so let's see if that works. Yeah, the last bit is here. Cough, cough. So, why is it? What is expecting us to do? Yeah. I shouldn't do anything. It's fine. Why is it not doing this? Connect, drop. Yeah, it's returning a value there, but it shouldn't be. Let me check inside an application that uses the DropTarget. We have a DropTarget there. Okay. Okay, this is the same. This is the same. Oh yeah. And then we do let's see if that works. Yeah, it's not V, it's gonna be value. It's not a target. Wait, what are you doing there? Oh yeah, no, sorry. This is me being stupid. Yeah, drop end is gonna happen here. Yep. Yeah, I know. Okay. So now you see how bad I am with Rust. Okay, so we are going to do this. Then we are going to... 'cause Oh no, I did something stupid again. Oh, this is something that is actually quite annoying in Builder. The runtime environment doesn't get saved. Which means I have to redo it all the time. Okay. See if I can see there. Oh, there you go. Yep. The drop was successful. We got a G file from Nautilus, and GTK immediately turned it into a G file and did everything that we asked it to. Perfect. So now we can modify it to give us the URI and add it, or just to call one of the APIs here that we have internally to queue a song, create a song for a URI and push it. Like right now we have an API to do add folders to queue and add file to queue, but those APIs take a list model. So actually what we care about is this. So we can do this here, create a song. We need to extract calls value get I'm going to remove this here. This one should be the API. I need to remember. I'm not. Okay. Yeah. Something like this. Agent. Yeah. No, here. What is it? Yeah. Dum as usual. So let's see what happens now. Cough, cough. So. And it worked. That is surprisingly very satisfying. Perfect. So we can drop this stuff here. We can drop the Y here. So this is very minimal kind of support for drag and drop inside GTK4. I mean, this is light years better than what we used to have in GTK3, of course. But yeah, if all you're interested in is a single file, you can drop stuff into it and that's gonna be fine. In theory, we could have a file list as well, so if you drop like a bunch of files, it will add them all, but generally speaking, this is all you need to do. And of course, it all supports stuff like the access to the file and everything else. So it's very useful, and again, it's very simple. From the visualization side of things, we might need to do a lot more. Like for instance, Fractal has the ability to overlay an indicator right on top of the DropTarget widget that will basically just display a simple icon saying drop something here to do X. There is an entire widget that does that. It's inside Fractal itself. I might end up copying it. Is GPL v3, and Amberol is GPL v3 as well. So I might end up copying it if I want to do visual like feedback of this stuff. But on the other hand, this is already pretty cool if I do say so myself. Being able to just drop a file from from anywhere in the file system using Nautilus. Just here. And then I can add more and add more and add more. Oh, get a critical warning there. Drop state none failed. I have no idea what drop state none means, but yeah. Oh, it's probably an assertion from something else there. Don't know. But yeah, that was very easy to do in about what, 20 minutes, half an hour. So, and mostly me spent running around trying to figure out Rust. Which is what happens, honestly. I'm not as confident with Rust as I'm with C or even Python. I guess this one should be true though. Let me double check. The drop signal here should return oh yeah, it returned through and accepted the drop. Yep. That's fine. Yeah, I have no idea what this critical warning is. It looks like something inside GTK. So I'll have to figure out if there's something wrong there. But it's definitely not inside the application. Or if it is inside the application, then there's something wrong at the bindings level, or no idea. Okie dokes. So yeah, this works fine, you know. Yeah, in theory we could have a DropTarget that accepts a lot more stuff. Like there's there's a content format for lists of file. It's called GTK file lists. It's iffy to use in bindings, so I'm not gonna add it right now. There's another thing that we could accept is literally audio data that we then store into a file and load from the file. That would be an interesting feature. Not entirely sure I care about, but yeah. We also need to do if song equals if creating a song for the given URI failed, then we have a default invalid song. So if the song is invalid, then we just give up. You can also, no, the warning will happen regardless, because the song constructor will warn. And then yeah, this one does all the other things there. Yeah, that seems to be working fine. So, I'm still in Fractal. Yeah, there are a bunch of stuff here that I'll have to modify before committing. Let's also switch to domain. Yeah, I'll also have to modify it. So if I launch this now, of course, I switch branch, so I have to rebuild the entire thing. And of course, that requires downloading half of GitHub. Annoying. It's going to be interesting to figure out how to dist this entire thing if people want to package it for distributions. That's going to be fun. I know that there are projects that have a dist script that basically downloads all the dependencies and stores them inside the final tarball for the application. So that's gonna be fun. I mean, there's a reason why I'm going to say, please don't package this stuff. Only use Flathub as soon as I push it to Flathub. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster. But yeah. Cough, cough. Yeah, there's going to be a couple of changes here and there that I have to perform as well. Mostly assets, like SVG assets. I have so what I wanted to show, it will still take a while because it has to finish building the entire thing. build the entire planet. So yeah, I have a default asset here for songs that don't have album covers, but right now is loading it from SVG using whatever implicit size the SVG has. I use the icon browser for that. I probably shouldn't have done that. Yeah, this is not a symbolic icon. This is an icon from the icon browser, the icon library. Sorry. Where did it go? Yeah, here. If I search for music, here I have music. This. And at most it's 64, but it probably is trying to load the 32-bit one, 32 by 32 pixels one. And I do all the stuff and it's fine and it's okay, but it's mostly meant to be used for an icon, and an icon asset is going to be smaller than this. So I will need to load it up and then not even scale it, but fit into that. I cannot use GTK image here because GTK image, the size of GTK image is dictated by the size of its contents. So it's for icons. Icons have fixed size, so everything is going to be fixed. GTK picture, on the other hand, is a widget that drives the size of its contents. So you can resize the widget and the contents will resize with it. You use it for assets like the cover art of your of a media file. But I'm trying to shove an icon there. I could use I could do a very evil thing, and I could use a stack here that uses a GTK image for the there is no cover art case, and a GTK picture for there is a cover art case. But it's pretty terrible. I mean, no. I'll have to just figure out a way to load the image that I'm literally shipping as an asset myself. Yeah, here it is. I'm getting the 16. Why am I getting that? Library again. Music. I should be getting the 64 one. No. Yeah, it's weird. What happens if I do something like this? Oh, yeah. Yikes. Okay. Yeah, you get this. Awesome. yeah, you get weird stuff there. So yeah, I'll have to figure out how to scale it up to 128 pixels by 128 pixel. I can ask the GNOME design team if I can get a 128 pixels version of this icon. I mean, I could load it up with Inkscape. Oh, what is this? No, I don't want you to show every time. What the heck? Okay. Open. Not the data. I want the sources, assets, icons. Okay. This is 16 by 16, right? So. Document properties. Okay. No. And yeah, okay, so. Okay, and here, so if I do something like this, I resize it this way, what will happen? Okay. Terrible. It's terrible, but it works. Probably less than that. Something like this. Okay. Little bit better. Not good, but a little bit better. Okay. Again, my evil and dastardly plan is I'm doing this and then somebody from the design team will start looking at it and we'll fix it. Either we'll fix it or they will just point and laugh at me until I fix it. But yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a good place to start at this point. I have other things that I want to work on, but they are going to be a little bit more on the logic side, and there's the DropTarget widget. I mean, I could literally do the DropTarget and see what happens there. If I copy it from Fractal sources, components, it's the drag overlay widget. So the drag overlay widget is here, this one. Source, components, drag overlay. It's Maximiliano. Please, people, put your details in your source code so I know who to credit. Otherwise, it's a mess. Bilal did a fix, but how big is it? It's 2-line fix, so it's not enough to claim copyright. Okay, so yeah, we have this. We have to go inside the main to mod overlay, and then we can go inside the UI file for the window. And instead of having everything inside GTK window handle, we do object plus drag overlay property name child, and we need to indent everything. So a drag overlay is just a big container that does a very basic thing. It handles the overlay for us. Here. It will have some other stuff. So it has a title, a child, and a drop target. So the property name, title, drag song. And then we're gonna add the drop title, the drop target there. We'll have to add it to the template, children, child, overlay. I'll have to include it. And we have to add it here. Overlay. See if it works. Cough, cough. Okay, there is a problem there. 226 and 228. Okay. Okay. So what we really care about is, oh yeah, too much. So this is the object. Yeah, I kind of understand why people are trying to switch to Blueprint. Okay, so no, this is going to be... This is where Vim would be helpful. So it's going to be property object child. So at column 9, we need a child. Yep. And this is going to be not child, but property. Yeah. Okay, so at offset 13, not gonna be child, but it's gonna be property. Blueprint is good, but I had trouble getting work on Silverblue. Yeah. I mean, I'm not super fond of this stuff. Okay. Yeah, if I don't add it. And also I'll have to bind it inside the window when we do the setup drop target. So it's going to be in overlay that drop target. I'm always kind of dubious about, so I understand that I was the person that said we should have, instead of having a completely new description format for our UI files and just building it out of like whole cloth without any feedback whatsoever, we should probably have domain specific languages that can be transformed into XML and built and loaded up with GTK Builder, just to experiment in the space of this particular like problem space. And I'm happy that somebody like picked it up and decided, okay, this is a replacement, and people are experimenting with it, and that is a good thing. That is an absolutely good thing. My main problem is that every time somebody designs a new domain specific language without having not a proper spec, but at the very least an entire overview of how the language is supposed to be working, there is not a bunch of examples, then a little bit inside of me, a little part of me inside dies, because it's the same mistake that has been made multiple times with entire programming languages. There is no specification, there is no way to say, is this valid syntax? Does this make sense? Is this validated for regressions? What happens if I change this? Will it break? Will it not break? What happened with custom syntax? It's always kind of blah. And just like specifications, people do this and they don't spend time on what happens next. Instead, they just do it. So let's see what happens here. Ooh, this is nice. Okay. I'll have to, yeah, style it probably a little bit better, but that's fun. Okay. That actually looks great. So I'm going to keep it. Yeah, allowed to style it. Like change the background, the backdrop and stuff. I don't know what kind of style is applied. If there is a style applied. Oh, drag overlay. There it is. I need to pick up the styling from Fractal. Well, not on the status page, but okay. Yeah. No, that's not what I want. Yeah, it sets the CSS name, but doesn't set any other style class there. I guess it's done elsewhere inside the... yeah, I guess it's done elsewhere inside the Fractal code base. I'll have to figure that out. So basically just change that whenever it gets into. Overstaying is something I wish to see better guidelines in the HIG. Yes, yes, I do too. I do too. I think it's not common right now because sorry. Cough cough. I think it's not common right now because we don't do drag overlays. The only indication that you're dropping something is it's usually like I think it's a green like highlight around the drop target. So it's hard. Yeah. If people are going to experiment with drag overlays a lot more, then yeah, I think we should have them inside the HID, which means moving the drag overlay widget into libadwaita as well. Though at this point there are way too many overlays. We have the toast overlay, the drag overlay. Yeah, it's going to be fun. We might need to have some internal overlay inside the adwaita window that will deal with drag like stuff and the toast using the same kind of overlay instead of having two widgets. Otherwise we are stacking widgets on top of one another and it's not going to be fun. Yeah, let me see if Fractal has something inside it. I was looking at the drag overlay. Let's see this. It does not seem to have any style. So oh, this is an interesting bit. I need to add this. Yeah. Yeah, otherwise it's going to be a problem. If I drop a file that I cannot deal with. Okay, we return false, otherwise we load it up. Okay. And then we do this, and then we return true. Otherwise, return false. Yeah, that should do it. Yeah, I don't understand how Fractal works that way, but I guess Fractal works a lot better because the way that it's styled, it's already different. So it's fine if they have a simple one. I could connect to more signals and add a style class and remove a style class whenever we enter or leave. But yeah, like make it semi-opaque, but it's going to be a pain. Yeah, I was lucky here because Fractal is already written in Rust and already has this widget that I can reuse. So that was very lucky. Cough, cough. Yeah. Right. So let's switch back. So. Ooh. Yeah, that was a quick like set of changes. But yeah, this application is not going to be complicated by design. The entire point of this application is to be super simple, minimal amount of edge cases, a very specific, well-defined workflow that does not involve any complexity in terms of managing songs or doing things like that. So this reduces the scope so much that it makes working on an application like this really a lot easier, a lot simpler. I don't want to make something that is too complicated. I've had enough of complicated applications. And the only complicated application that I currently use is GNOME Builder, which is an IDE. Not every application has to be an IDE. Not every application has to have plugins. Not every application has to have a massive database. Not every application has to index files, stuff like that. I honestly think we are much better with simpler applications. Not every application has to end up reading your email. I know it's tempting to do so, but yeah. Oh, one thing that I didn't yeah, let me switch back. So one thing that I didn't explain was that one of the advantages of using Rust, to be honest, is that you have a coding style checker that is available right out of the box. And the other thing is all Rust code follows the exact same coding style if you use the tool, of course, but everyone is very much encouraged to use the tool. And one thing that Fractal has inside, well, it's not just Fractal, it's a lot of GNOME related Rust projects. They have a script that will run the formatting tool for you. A lot of people just add it as a Git hook, so locally we'll run it, we'll run the checks before you commit stuff. I prefer to have it explicitly because I do too many rebases to be comfortable with that. So it's in tree, it's inside the... It's inside the repository, so people can actually use it. And it does a few interesting bits, like not just coding style, but also checks for typos in your source code and documentation. And it does also check the translatable files, which is kind of important. Translatable files are kind of always an afterthought. At least I noticed that, because a lot of times people modify some project that I work on or that I maintain, and after that comes a commit, usually from Piotr, that basically fixes the list of translatable files because somebody forgot to update it. And this little check here does it for you, so you don't have to remember. I should really run it inside as part of our of the CI pipeline, to be honest, and then do what I've done with libgweather. So libgweather has a CI job that runs on every merge request, and if the coding style does not match, it will the CI job itself will add a comment to the merge request saying, this is what's wrong with the coding style, please fix it. And it's great. It removed 99.9% of the time I usually spend on a project, like reviewing merge requests. If the coding style does not match, the computer tells me the coding style did not match. So the people that open the merge request can fix it. And I don't have to do coding style reviews, which are boring and suck the fun of anything. But yeah, that was surprisingly painless. Not painful, painless. For about half an hour, 45 minutes of work. So I'm pretty impressed. And yeah, ideally, so I understand why people use Rust for applications now, to be honest with you. It's very close to C in how you write your applications. It's very close to how a C developer writes applications in using like GTK and everything else. It's the line noise bit is just that, it's a different language, so of course it's going to have a different syntax. If we start from the fact that C has very little syntax, then anything that is not C is going to be shocking to you. But it's not Perl in terms of like syntax thrown at you. Yeah, it has the turbofish operator here that is basically a cast. Wow. Terrifying. The design is the same. The design of a Rust application and a C application are, when it comes to GTK and GObject, is exactly the same. You create a GObject and then you have some private data there, and the private data is what you actually operate on. Wow, shocker. So it gets a little bit verbose that way, but if you're writing C code, it's gonna be verbose anyway. And the additional stuff that it's there is general safety, like type safety on what you're doing. You have the compiler that checks for you if you're trying to use stuff that is not that you have consumed, which is a plus in my book usually. It gets annoying because it's very explicit, but that means you don't get weird segfolds, which again, it's a plus in my book. I don't have to use GDB here. If the compiler is happy, usually it means that I'm not gonna have a separate encounter with the debugger, trying to see why some variable is set to null. Cough, cough. And yeah, it's the way it forces you to structure your application is also kind of interesting in terms of Rust applications tend to scale with size. They're not like Python application for that matter. So I kind of understand why people are starting to have picked up Rust for writing this kind of stuff. Writing applications with it, especially. Of course, now I will be screwed because every time I go back into C, then I realize, oh, all this stuff is I have to handle it manually and not doing it like I'm not relying on the computer to do it for me. Chad is being infiltrated by a gamer. Yeah, hopefully, I mean, there are some things that need to be made simpler. But I think a lot of this stuff is just like not even syntactic sugar. It's just a matter of documenting best practices. JavaScript is undefined hell. I mean, yeah. Rust forces you to check if something is nullable, for instance, but that happens on other languages. That happens on C#. That happens with Vala. If you enable the please tell me when I'm using nullable like variables and stuff. So it's not weird. It's not completely alien to other languages. It's not even the it's not even the wrap and the unwrapping of union types like result and option. That is just I mean, if you use if foo equals null in C, then it's the same thing. The if let construct is a lot nicer though. Because you do the assignment as well. can you avoid the match? But yeah, I guess this is it for today. I'm probably going to do some more stuff on Wednesday at this point. I have... yeah. So one thing that I said on Friday that I wanted to do was restructure the player logic to use message passing instead of using basic signals and manipulating state. I think I figured out a way to do it that is not completely mental, but we'll see what happens there. But other than that, I think what happens next with Amberol is mostly like style fixes, a couple of other things, mostly consistency with the internal state when there's a song in play or there are no songs in the queue, and things like that. One of the things that was raised on Twitter last night, which was an interesting point, is that a lot of media players on mobile have this functionality. That is, they will look at the contents of the cover art, especially the edge pixels of the cover art, and then they will restyle the background of the application to match or to fit in with the overall colors of the cover. And that is a very interesting functionality to have, to be fair. I get the cover art as some encoded format, PNG, JPEG, or TIFF. Right now, I just take those bytes and shove them into a GTK texture. So I let GTK do the file decoding for me. But I could instead just take it, put it inside GTK pixbuff, and then look at the pixels on the left and right edges of the pixel buffer, and then just extrapolate a gradient that goes from one side to the other, or top down. I'm probably gonna go with a horizontal gradient instead of a vertical one because of the orientation of the UI. If I had a complete change of orientation depending on form factor, so the cover art at the center of the window and then everything below it, then you could do it there. No Vibrance package that builds a palette from album artwork. Yeah, there are. Somebody also proposed this on for libgranite. There's a merge request there that basically adds API to extract all the dominant colors out of album artwork and create a palette that you can then do things with. Yeah, I can also take the album art and blur, but blur is kind of expensive, even on the GPU. I don't want to do that. Instead, I want to use the CSS machinery so that GTK will handle it for me in the most efficient way. So I'll just take it and create a gradient for it, or I could create a solid color as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, in theory I could determine the axis of transition inside the cover art. So if the left and right edges are close and the top and bottom edges are very different, then I could use those and create a vertical gradient instead. It's at some point it's just astronauting my way out of this problem. I could even use a solid color as far as I'm concerned. Just do an average of the edges of the color value of the pixel edges. It's yeah, that's another option, to downscale the image and do something like that. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, there are a bajillion strategies that some will look better than others. It also mostly depends on the cover art itself at that point. So I'll figure something out. There is another thing that I want to add, because it's kind of interesting. It's not strictly speaking necessary. It will look good on a mobile device probably. On the desktop is not that necessary. It also will require some tweaking with the text color. So you have to flip the text color from dark to light, depending on the saturation of the color. And do you not have any local music? Cough, cough. Yeah, I understand the sentiment. A lot of the development in music players over the past, I don't know, 10 plus years has been, oh, people are listening to music on like streaming services or remote services. We should have music players that favor that. Turns out that those streaming services don't really like it when you use a third-party client. They really want to use their client, because then they can serve you advertisement and they can make money out of it. Shocking, I know. Who would have thought? But yeah, that's what happened. That's what happens. So the end result is that my local music collection, which has been very carefully curated for the past 15 plus years, it's coming back out of the dark years of streaming and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, there are music players in the Linux space, desktop and mobile, that will integrate with remote services, and I'm happy with that. I'm fine with that. The local case is still very much the domain of the music collection app, and a music collection app is essentially undistinguishable from Microsoft Access UI from 2003. Honestly, no. I just want to play music. I don't want to manage a database. Please, don't let me manage a database. Anyway, I think we are done for today, and I'll be doing something more on Wednesday, like more hacking on Amberol, and see where we get with it. If you enjoy watching me struggle writing Rust code for GNOME, and also writing documentation for GNOME, and writing application code for GNOME, then feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I upload the streams that I do on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 4 p.m. London time. If you do this, if you want to just watch me do it live, then follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Abassi, and you will get notified whenever I get online and start streaming about this stuff. And for everyone else that is still here, and I hope you enjoyed this this stream, and absolutely feel free to follow me here so that I can continue doing this. I actually enjoy streaming a lot about this. And yeah, have a great rest of your day, great rest of your Monday, and I hope to see you all on Wednesday.